What does acceptance truly mean? I still recall the words of the Taishi professor asking that question in class, his narrow tongue darting out from his green mouth to lick his eyeballs clean, a habit he performed more frequently than most of his kind. As a budding xenobiologist, I recognized that it indicated his discomfort in being surrounded by so many students, which made sense since his species was known for being solitary. This alone made him unique in his role. But what truly set him apart was his profound understanding of species beyond his own. His question marked the start of countless careers, as it focused on a species known as Homo sapiens sapiens, humans, as they called themselves. No immediate answer followed. Many of us, with our claws, tentacles, and more, frantically searched digital texts for the answer. The echo of his question faded into the walls. This too made him unique. Unlike most professors, he insisted on conducting in-person classes, pushing us to interact in ways we didn't fully understand. Yet somehow this approach made us better students. Over time, his method began to spread to other instructors. Next, he asked, "What is the meaning of family?" The urgency of our searches quickened. My neighbor, a Chelan with a rubber-tipped assist over his slimy digit, entered the word into the search bar. Before I could raise my hand, one of the miniature dwarf species, a spiny feathered aven named Chopus, answered. Though no taller than my knee, he was the top of the class, second only to me. My frustration flared as he surpassed me, but then relief washed over me when the professor shook his head. No, that's a definition, but not the one I mean. Sixth, our Taishi professor licked each of his 5 eyes in quick succession. I knew he disliked mere correctness, but his search for meaning went beyond the definitions in the book. So I raised my fur-covered arm and opened my jaw, speaking with my tongue wagging as I asked, "Professor, there's no other meaning in the book. Please, can you tell us what you mean?" What happened next was unlike anything I had heard in my life. The professor made a strange noise, as if imitating a species none of us had encountered. He pushed a button, and a curious creature appeared on the screen. His mouth made a what noise, unlike anything natural to him. On the screen was a bipedal species, covered in fur with small lips and only 2 arms. This, he explained, was the species that held the answers to our questions. "If you can understand them, you can understand any species," he said. "In my 150 cycles of instruction and research, I have found no species like them. They bond with inanimate objects, fictional characters, unknown infants, and even other species as deeply as their own. They domesticate predators and bond even with those that could otherwise eat them. A human whose parents reject them will find new ones or adopt new roles. They're a smarter, faster, stronger species, but none are more passionate. They are constantly forming new groups, growing and evolving. If you earn their trust, they will die for you without hesitation. No species is as full of contradictions as Homo sapiens sapiens sapiens. They love and hate deeply, laugh loudly, and embody both greed and generosity. Though they may appear weak, their contradictions make them the apex predator of their planet. No invader dares enter a system where humans have formed bonds." The professor paused, leaving the question lingering in the air. We all sensed the unreasonableness of it. No species we knew would act that way, and although I had heard of the victory in 47592, the human starship was a mere footnote. Humans weren't even named. But then a low rumble of disbelief spread through the room. "I promise you it's true," the professor said. "I was there. That's what led to the peace that followed. Self-termination for another species was unheard of, and the Zenti didn't know what to make of it." He continued, recounting the impromptu negotiations that followed and how the study of humans began. "I knew I had to learn more. I spent the next 100 years of my life among them, and within 10 years I had earned their acceptance. I became their neighbor, their brother, their uncle. I watched their generations grow, age, and die. To my astonishment, I felt the grief of loss myself. To understand humanity's depths is to find them within ourselves. And that," the professor explained, "is how I came to be here today." He leveled his clawed finger toward us, making us all sit a little straighter. "You too will join human communities. You will learn what family truly means. When you're done, you will understand something you never imagined before. And you will carry that understanding back to your own worlds. And from there, who knows what will happen. But I believe it will make the galaxy a better place." I don't know why, but I felt certain he was right. Maybe it was his reputation or the fact that he had handpicked each of us as his students. His faith in us made us confident in him. Whatever the reason, I became even more eager to learn. 50 years didn't seem so long anymore. Later, I would learn just how right the professor had been. But that's a story for another time. The music, religion, and social customs for the place we would stay were all provided to us. It was during this time that I first realized why Homo sapiens sapiens can be so terrifying. It wasn't just their fascination with fear, there were entire genres of entertainment designed to keep their psychology on edge. This alone drove 2 students to drop out. Fear is something all other species avoid, yet humans embrace it. What fascinated me, though, was how humans envision threats. Gods, demons, natural disasters capable of wiping out entire planets, and aliens with technology that defies reality. Humans require the impossible to feel truly threatened. Anything less seems like a trivial challenge. In their films and TV shows, the narrative is always one of human triumph. Some might say this represents arrogance, but our teacher explained it differently. Humans made the leap into the unknown in a fraction of the time it took my species to gather the courage to do so. They define themselves by their will to overcome any obstacle, constantly pushing themselves to their limits and beyond. They create new challenges for the next generation to conquer. A human will sacrifice their life for a friend, for an ideal, or even for an infant, whereas others might consider their offspring expendable and simply replace them. Humans will die happy if they believe their death has contributed to a better future. Their films depict this boundless potential. I had come to believe it too, especially after hearing a broadcast where humans arrived with weapons blazing, claiming they would help us. It took me a long time to translate yippee-ki. But the broadcast continued even after their ship collided with our attackers, and I heard something I had never encountered before. When intelligent species die, they die to the sound of music with death songs. It was terrifying, but also oddly hopeful. During the long journey, I immersed myself in more of their media pirate movies, where even the lowest of the low die with courage, war films where people sacrifice themselves for causes they can't win, and romances where passionate bonding was on full display. I was also struck by their bond with predator pets, especially how they cared for their dogs as if they were infants. No one really considers how powerful bonding is, but now I was witnessing it firsthand. 2 months later, we encountered the first human patrols. Their vessels were far larger than I expected, and that's when I learned something more about humans. They bring miniature communities into space. Families, mates, children, even the elderly, who would typically be left behind in other species. I found it odd, but when I first saw a human face, it was even stranger. Their faces were flat with very small noses, and the human who spoke to my professor had thick black fur around his mouth and deep-set eyes, which seemed small compared to mine. After exchanging pleasantries and IDs, we were allowed to dock. The professor selected 3 of us to join him on the human vessel, giving us a chance to explore the miniature society that humans had formed. The ship we docked at was military, with massive cannons the size of buildings, a hallmark of their design philosophy. Bigger explosions are always better. However, because the vessel was so large, we found a small hover vehicle waiting for us when we crossed the boarding tubes. This highlighted my second experience with human design philosophy. There's no such thing as too fast, only how fast you can make it go. It was no surprise they invented the transport method that broke the subspace speed limit, which had baffled scientists for ages. "Strap in and hold tight," a small human female told us. At least, I assumed she was female, based on the pitch of her voice. She explained that we were strapped into a 4-point harness, with a crossbar in front for us to hold on to in case things got intense. And then, without warning, my tongue was yanked out of my mouth, and the ship became a blur. I had never felt both thrilled and terrified at the same time. The air whipped past my face, blowing my fur back, and my tail wiggled with joy underneath my seat. I saw what I now recognized as a smile on the woman's face. My companions, on the other hand, were alarmed, shedding chitin scales and activating my roommate's stink sack briefly, which caused the hovercraft to swerve. The woman made a noise I later learned was laughter as she kept swerving, sending us upside down on the ceiling. You wouldn't believe how hard it was to find the right translation for the word "we" that she kept shouting as we looped around the empty corridor. Eventually, we lurched to a stop that rattled my bones, and my professor, with a knowing glance, said, "Shall we grab a beer?" From the videos, I knew her grin meant the rest of our trip would be promising. However, my companions were too busy struggling to unfasten themselves and voiding their stomachs onto the floor to notice it. As for what happened next, well, you'll have to wait. I had never felt unsteady on my legs before, but my slimy colleague had no legs of his own. He was capable of solidifying himself for short periods, but after leaving the hovercraft, he became gelatinous again, wobbling like he'd just experienced a quake. I wobbled a bit myself, and to my surprise, the small human female was immediately at my side, placing her hand gently on my arm. Her skin was soft, and she squeezed it as delicately as a feather falling. She gave me a smaller version of her earlier smile and asked, "Are you okay?" "I'm sorry. I didn't think to ask how any of you could handle speed." Apologies were a strange custom among humans. They express regret for an offense or feeling inflicted, but I would later learn that there is a non-apology disguised as an apology, such as "I'm sorry if you feel I'm sorry, but," or "I'm sorry you." These expressions either include a negation or shift the apology's focus onto the other person's perception. True human apologies, however, involve the speaker taking responsibility for their actions. In that moment, though, I simply found her touch comforting and didn't realize how warm human bodies could be. I replied, "I'm fine, thank you. Please don't worry about it," which seemed to satisfy her. My professor then licked his eyeball, once an odd gesture, but it was enough to show that I had handled myself well. "Please, let me introduce you to some of my friends and get you all a drink on me," she said, pulling out a little plastic card from the fleet's good relations account. She winked, a gesture that could indicate playfulness or deception, but unsure of which it was. I nodded silently. As she approached the double doors, they slid open, and I was immediately struck by the noise of voices higher and lower pitched than hers. I had thought humans were easily divided into obvious male and female categories, but this room proved that textbooks don't cover everything. Some humans seemed almost as genderless as my fluidic companion. I couldn't tell one from another, and some seemed to enjoy playing up this ambiguity. The room itself was enormous, vast by our species' standards, easily several hundred of my paces in either direction. Tables and bars filled the space, and I recognized it from films. My colleagues and fellow students.